welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. It's back like it never left. This conversation on the removal of fuel subsidy is something that continues to agitate both the leaders and the led. Following the passage into law of the Petroleum Industry Bill 2 years ago, it was only a matter of time before it came back up again, as regulation could only be effectively done in an industry where government itself wasn't such an involved player, with subsidy payments effectively gulping a whopping 3.36 trillion naira in the first half of this year alone, after rounding off at about 7 trillion naira in 2022. There are now big questions as to whether Nigeria is putting its very scarce resources to effective use where it mattered most. These discussions come up as all of the candidates in the run-up to the 2023 elections vowed to remove petrol subsidy and put it to more effective use elsewhere. But with inflation figures running away with the wind in an economy that still relies on import for most of its daily energy needs, analysts have wondered how this can be effectively done without inflicting further hardship on those already feeling vulnerable from economic downturn. On Hard Copy tonight, I speak with Festus Osifo, who wears two caps, one as president of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Pengasan, and the other as president of the Trade Union Congress, its umbrella body. Mr. Osifo, it's good to have you again once more on Hard Copy. Welcome. Thank you so much, Maokwe. Good evening, Nigerians. Well, this issue of subsidy removal or subsidy payments is back again. Yeah, correct. Back like it never left. And I'm just, wondering whether we're approaching this issue with the sensitivity, with the courage, and the decisiveness it deserves. Do you think that we're beginning to get to that point, or do you think that we're still a bit touchy in terms of how we talk about subsidy, especially on petrol? Yes, if you remember sometime in 2020, the conversation of subsidy came to the front burner, and we had a lot of discussions and meetings with government. Then I wasn't the president of Trade Union Congress, but I was in all the meetings that were held as at then. But when it got to 2021, after the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act, the government on its own decided to step back, and we all knew that they did that because of the forthcoming election, the 2023 elections. So now it's back to the front burner because the election is over. We are moving into the new administration. So I think that is a conversation that we must have. I think it's a conversation that all the stakeholders must sit down together to really look at this subsidy and its impact on the Nigerian economy, and as well as when you remove it, what is going to be the impact on the people as well. So it's a conversation that must be held. Otherwise, we'll keep shifting it from one point to another. You talk about 2020. I remember I know it's been on for much longer, but I know that, effectively I started participating in discussions of subsidy from 2012. No, true. 2011, 2012. And I think it's one of the times where the government actually did remove it, but had to put it back as a result of the protests that followed 2012. That followed the removal of fuel subsidy. So I'm just wondering right now, do you think that there looks like there is sufficient will to be able to take a more decisive action from the conversations that we're currently having? Why I said 2020 was because, I was just talking about the recent conversation we're having with this government. Subsidy has been there. The discussion has been on since the 80s, the 90s, and so on. Yes. So it's been there. Currently, I think that the new government, just as you've said, the three leading presidential candidates, they all said that this is the direction to go. But on their part, they may be serious to getting it out, but on the part of labor and on the part of civil society, we also need to analyze to be very sure that what they are about doing, how will it impact on the people. And let me quickly state this, that just as from your intro, I double as Pengasan and TUC president. So I want to quickly do a distinction between the position of both of them.
So Pengassan, as at 2016, in a NEC meeting that was held in Calabar, then I was the branch chairman of Total Energies E&P. I wasn't the president. So we reached a conclusion that it is good for the sector to be deregulated. The reason that was reached was because of the fact that when we looked at it, the downstream sector of the oil and gas industry was not developing at the same pace as the upstream was. And again, I could remember some of the arguments that were held as at then. Part of these arguments, was that at times, in fact, there was an analogy that was made by one of the branch chairmen then, that subsidy is just like a man that loves his child so well, and he will lock the child in a room, or maybe the daughter, lock the daughter in the room. He doesn't want the doctor to go out. So that son will not touch the daughter. But at the end of the day, you are stopping your daughter from going to school. You are stopping your daughter from being exposed to the outside world. So you are protecting your daughter from a particular physical weather like the sun. But there are other things that your daughter is actually missing. So when that thing came, that was now drawn to the fact that, as at then, that if we continue the subsidy, the argument then was that it will get to a time that Nigerian government, that the debt is going to increase. It will get to a time because the earnings from the crude oil sales is what actually supports our foreign exchange earning as a country. So to get to a time, CBN will no longer be able to defend the currency. That was 2016. So when I check back today, I look at the position of Pengassan as at 2016. How has it affected our economy today? Today now, we all knew from 2016 to date how the dollar has moved where we are today. We all also knew that today we have had, runaway inflation, more than 20%, and today as well, we have also seen how the ways and means, the debt that the government is owing, external, internal, and even the debt to CBN. I just read this morning that the current debt is about 46.25 trillion naira. So all these are actually affecting the economy. So what Pengassan did then was that, okay, let's look at it. That in costing, you have both the explicit, the implicit cost. You have the opportunity cost. So the fact that we are holding on to subsidy, that subsidy should not go. Now, how will that impact on other areas of our economy? For example, if you spend your salary on 10 items, and petrol is one of them, so you are holding that down. You holding down that petrol, is it actually affecting the other 9 items? Because we all know that what is leading to our inflation today, and the reasons, if you go to the market, everything has literally gone up. It could be tied to devaluation. So the discussion as at then was, if government had more money, or rather, if our exchange rate was quite okay, would we be in the same hardship that we are today? So that was in 2016. But if you now draw it to where we are today, you see that Pengassan's position then was really correct, because the fears as at then is actually where we have found ourselves today. So take it to TUC. So TUC, Pengassan is one of the affiliates out of about 35 affiliates of TUC. So it's not as at then Pengassan came to TUC to explain their position. So it's not left for us. When we meet at TUC level, we are also going to look at Pengassan's position vis-a-vis all other affiliates as well. We will debate them, and as TUC, we will come up with a particular position. But the point in general is that anything we are doing, we must ensure that the Nigerian masses, the Nigerian workers are better for it. The Nigerian workers will not be exposed. So if holding one item, we expose the Nigerian workers in other areas, we will debate it and we will agree. But if not, if, for example, we could say, government in the past has said a lot of things. They are going to bring palliatives, but they are never sincere. That is also the difficulty. And one of the reasons that it has also been difficult for the trade union over the years to also key to some government policies is because they will say one thing today, they do some other thing tomorrow. And the trust deficit that we have had in successive government, it's been terrible. So it is not actually difficult for you to believe them.
So let me get this straight. You are saying right now that the Pengasen already has a position it's had since 2016.
Correct.
But TUC, they get to take a position, is that correct?
Yes, so TUC position over the years has been that, okay, you have to fix the refineries, you have to fix, so there are condition precedents before you go ahead to implement subsidy. But all this, yes.
Pengasen doesn't have any of those conditions, does it?
Yes. Pengasen in the past has actually advocated that refineries should be fixed. In fact, it is because of the intervention of Pengasen and Nupeng that you have enormous work going on today in the Port Harcourt and the Warri refinery. I could tell you enormous work are going on. So what we have said is that this thing can go side by side. As we are pushing for, because if we push for the refineries to be fixed, we know how it's going to create jobs. We know how the value chain of that sector or the subsector is going to be deepened. We know that if refineries are working, you are going to have fertilizer companies, petrochemical companies, a lot of jobs, both primarily and secondary jobs will be created. So we understand that. We are pushing government in that regard. But what we also said then was that let's be careful, guys. As we are holding on to this, what are the opportunity costs? And how is it going to affect the larger economy? Because there are things that, as labor, we also need to deepen our conversation. We also need to look at it more broadly, not to look at it from a narrow gauge.
It is important, but I find it interesting explaining different positions of these different unions. Correct. Because I know that the NLC, a sister union and very big union as well, they are right now approaching a wait-and-see game. What I do know is previously, even though when we spoke with him this morning, Comrade Joe Ajero was saying that he didn't want to talk about the issue for now because government is not exactly clear on what it wants to do. What he had told us previously was that it should not equate, that he doesn't believe that fuel subsidy removal equates to an increase in the price of fuel. I don't know how that is going to, how that's going to work out. And if that's what government is saying, then they're going to have problems. So,
you are right.
So for you, I mean, how looking at this different position, because you've also said that, the TUC, is saying that there must be conditions precedent.
Yes.
Which is some of where the NLC is also coming from, saying that they cannot understand how a country that is producing crude oil, is still importing petrol and trying to impose the price of the importation on its citizens.
Yes, you are correct. Part of the conversation, maybe because of the fact that we are from the oil and gas, we've done a lot of petroleum engineering, petroleum economics and all that. Maybe the understanding is a bit different, so we will be patient with everybody. I'm speaking as Pengasen president, so we'll be patient with everybody. But we will also make them see the bigger picture. Like as I have said, the greatest constraint and the greatest problem is government. Government is still living as if there is no problem in the country. They are still spending whatsoever. They vote money they put money in security votes. At the end, you don't know how they spend it. So that is why the conversation is difficult. Like as I have said in this studio at a particular time, that is just like a man that is telling his children that there's no money at home, that we need to tighten our belt. But this man at the end of the day, he is spending money in things that doesn't matter. So the kids will tell Daddy, no, what you are telling us is not true. So now, coming back home to your question, I think as well that, that the position as canvassed is also correct, depending on the data that you are looking at. Fuel subsidy removal is not exactly equal to increment in pricing. It depends on the price of crude oil. If crude oil today in international market is selling at about $40 per barrel, then we will not be paying any subsidy today. But because of the price of crude oil, that is why we are paying subsidy today. Because if you look at it, you'll discover that, okay, just like in the last 1 week, the landing cost of PMS, it's around 300 naira per litre.
I'm going to have to ask you to read your thoughts there, because we'll talk about pricing when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. The president of TUC and Pengasen, Mr. Festus Osifo, is our guest tonight. Well, we're talking about pricing just before we went on break, and I do know that that's one very controversial area. You have explained that it depends on the landing cost. Maybe it's because of that you talked about between 300 and 400 naira. I think Ipman has suggested 750 naira. Why do you think, first, that there is a disparity in some of the prices that people are coming up with? And do you think that government should be pegging prices? Isn't this supposed to be a deregulated market?
Okay, thank you so much. Before I come to that, let me quickly also state on the position of the NLC president, because we've had conversations on this. As of today, government is not engaging labor on this specific subject. So there is no engagement whatsoever. So that is actually why the president of NLC said it's not yet time for us to have that conversation, because government, as of now, is not forthcoming on any discussion whatsoever. Having said that, coming to the pricing. Yeah, so in Pengasa, we had our National Executive Council meeting on Tuesday, 28th of March, here in Abuja. So on the sideline of the NEC meeting, some journalists accosted me and they asked that Ipman said that the price of PMS should be 750 naira. They now asked me what's my opinion on that. I said, yeah, that Ipman has done their calculation, and they are basing their calculation on $750 naira to $1. That if you use that calculation, that you actually come up, the landing cost today will actually come up to that. But that as of today, the sole importer of PMS is actually NNPC. So NNPC is using the CBN rate of about 430, 440 naira per USD. That if you use that in computing, that the landing cost as of today was about 300 naira. So when you now build in the other cost, the other logistics cost, and the price and the profit margin, it could take it up to maybe somewhere around 380 and 400. So it wasn't that Pengasan was recommending 400 naira, no. Or Pengasan is fixing the price for 400, no. But what Pengasan was just saying was that given the circumstance today, that the landing cost is about 300. So if you add the other logistics and profit margin, is going to take it up to about 400. So that was to create a distinction between what Ipman president said and what we think is the reality today. So now coming to pegging and pricing. So the greatest difficulty that we will have in moving into deregulation today is actually our foreign exchange. If you actually want to remove subsidy and you want to deregulate, and you are saying that marketers should go to parallel market and source for FX, what is going to happen is that the exchange rate today of about 750 naira is going to jump to over 1,000 because there is going to be pressure in the parallel market. And if that happens, this pricing that Ipman even said is going to go much more than that. That was why I said that there are a lot of variables that must be considered. And that is the reason why government must sit down with all the stakeholders for us to look at the data and for us to agree to the best way forward. Because you cannot subject your energy security to the vagaries of the parallel market. What if parallel market tomorrow move to 1,500? Then you are going to be buying your PMS per liter for over 1,500. Can Nigerians actually afford that? Do
you think that NNPC should still be the sole importer then in that case?
No, NNPC might not be the sole importer, but they should be able to get foreign exchange at the CBN rate. And again, as labor, we also need to look at the multiple exchange rates that exist today. So even if we deregulate today, for example, and PMS is being sold from our analysis at about 400, so if the exchange rate now moves from where it is today to about 600-700, we are going to pay 60% more of that. So government cannot completely remove their hand.
All of this is based on import. I mean, we are basing all of the assumptions that we're going to be importing. There is no, I mean, because we're told the Port Harcourt refinery ought to have come on board. You said a lot of work is going on there, as well as the Warri refinery, but it doesn't look like, any of those refineries are going to be coming on board in time to be able to move pari passu with whatever it is they're planning for the regulation.
It is not actually based on importation alone. So from the analysis, okay, today, Dangote Refinery is coming on stream, right? So if Dangote Refinery comes on stream, how is he going to source for crude? He's going to buy crude both from government, he will buy crude from Chevron, he will buy crude from Total Energies, buy crude from ExxonMobil. that crude that he is going to buy will be bought at international market rate. Because Chevron will not sell crude to Dangote at a subsidized rate. They are going to sell crude at international market. So, and crude contributes up to 80% of the cost of PMS. So because crude is priced in the international market, we are still going to have that exchange rate variation. If government subsidizes the crude cost, you could buy it cheaper. But if that crude cost is still at the same international market rate, because IOCs will not sell for you at a cheaper price.
So these are all the conversations and all of the vagaries that government now needs to work out in terms of what should happen. But you've talked about how there is a lack of trust, a trust deficiency.
Yeah.
What do you think that government needs to do to entrench, to increase the level of trust, especially maybe for some of the things that's going to come up with? Because whether or not, with what we've seen, especially with the implementation of the cashless policy and, you know, the kind of hardship that people went through to be able to come by monies that they kept in banks by themselves, you know, it does look like it's going to be an uphill task to be able to sell something as, you know, touching on their pocket as deregulation.
As Pengasam president, so when I was vying for this position, so I went around the various refineries to discuss with them. I understand what the problems as at then were. So I was shocked when a particular employee who was then the branch chairman of Port Harcourt Refinery told me that he was employed in 2007, and from 2007 till date, that there had not been a single turnaround maintenance in Port Harcourt Refinery. I was shocked. But if you go to Port Harcourt Refinery today, you will see the enormous work that is actually going on there. So that is the trust. Unlike before, where they approve turnaround maintenance is just on paper. You don't see anything happening there. No single valve is being removed or changed. But today, there's a lot of work going on. And the same thing as well is going on in Warri. So the point is actually that when government say they are going to do something, let them do it. Because when the populace, when we see that, okay, the people out there, they have 10 private jets, all the governors, they fly jets everywhere, they do, and you are not telling me that there's austerity. Even when I know that there's austerity, maybe because of the level of exposure, it will be difficult for me to now tell my constituents that, oh, really, there is austerity, we have to understand with government. So they must lead by example. When they do that, it's easier for us to have this conversation.
Let me quickly ask you, I mean, because there's no way I can let you go without talking about politics. I mean, you have just witnessed the last governorship, I beg your pardon, yes, governorship and presidential elections, and your constituency own you own the Labour Party, and we've seen some of the fallouts from the presidential elections in particular. I wonder what steps, I mean, are you satisfied with the steps that have been taken so far, and do you think that redress will be able to come through from the process that has been started?
Yes. First of all, I wish to congratulate Labour Party and also the presidential flag bearer for having a very wonderful race, because, you know, before now, nobody thought that a third force could be able to gather over 6 million votes when you don't have a governor, when you don't have any member of both the federal legislature and even the state legislative arm. You don't have a single member, not even a single local government chairman. Structure. What they call structure. But we have proven to them that the people are actually the structure. We have shown them that no, that Nigerians are angry. We have let them understand the fact that they have we've had bad governance for a very long time, and the people are really impatient and they are yearning for genuine and true change, not just the type that happened in 2015. So having said that, I think as well that ANEC promised a lot, but they boggled it at the end, because I think the Beavers was phenomenal. Then also the RF. This could have added to some level of transparency in the system, whereby from your polling unit, you go to your ward, you go to your polling unit, and you see the result uploaded. When you see that, it gives you some level of confidence in the system. But at the end of the day, after so much promises, RF refused to work. So that has dented the entire process. That has actually brought a lot of speculations and a lot of doubt in the entire system. Now, I'm also happy that Labour Party, as the Workers' Party, has also decided to toe the path of law by going to the court. But I want to also use the opportunity to call on our judiciary to do the needful, to stand and be courageous. When they see the truth, let the truth be stamped. Because when you see some of the decisions of the judiciary in the recent past, it's quite worrisome where somebody will not participate in an election, like the case of Senate President. They participate in the primaries, but Supreme Court said is a candidate. So it's quite worrisome. But we still have faith that judiciary will do the needful. But all Nigerians, we must be vigilant. We must follow them one step after the other.
Will the needful only mean when the candidate of the Labour Party emerges or is declared as president? Is that when the needful will be seen to have been done?
Not at all. But when you read this case, we are human. So when you read the judgment at the end of the day, you will see through. So the point is that if they discover that the president-elect is not the winner of the election, they should have that courage by coming up with what the true situation is. If they also discover as well that is the true winner, and we also read the judgment, and we read and we look at all the polling units, we look at all the results that are currently uploaded in IRF, we will be able to reach that conclusion. But the major point is that they should stand up for justice, no matter whose horse is gone.
Mr. Festus Osifo, thank you for coming on Hard Copy.
Maokpe. Thank you so much, Maokpe. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's the program tonight. All feedback are welcome to the handles showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokpe Yusuf. Good night.